Hello, YouTube. Okay, let's go live on Instagram and get into today's live. Right. Hello, Instagram. All right, we're live on all accounts. We are going to be speaking about specific things that I was having a conversation with a client about today around self concept, around how it creates your reality. And I don't want to be speaking in like an airy, fairy, fluffy way, like just try to act like what you want to create. I mean, that's a part of it for a degree, but we like practicality in the world of JP. And so behind me, I've got some notes from the conversation with my client. She said definitely like share these things that we were having conversations around when it comes to identity shifting, self concept, different levels of consciousness. And the first thing that I really want to just like lay as the main point here is remember your self concept, your identity is foundational to manifesting lasting changes. You can manifest changes that are instant wins, instant gratification, things that happen randomly. But the way that you perceive yourself ultimately and the way that you perceive yourself in the world that you're living in is going to determine whether that manifestation is lasting change or whether it's instant gratification, a quick win. Something I do with all my clients is we like a slow burn. We like setting up our life where it is a long-term vision and a long-term legacy that we are creating. Because when we create a long-term vision, when we create a long-term legacy, what actually happens is things become lasting. We also get to understand and know ourselves a lot better. That's why and I think the coaching industry is slowly changing, but that's why there has been so many people. I work with high achieving women. There's been so many high achieving women that have been burned by coaches because everything is around this quick win, this instant gratification. Like, let's just feel good really like right now in this moment. But like, let's not worry about the future, or let's not worry if it's going to stick, or that's going to be a future problem. Whereas everything that I work on with my clients is about let's actually make this something that sticks. So the foundational part to self concept, self perception, being able to observe yourself in who you are and what you are, that it's really important to know that that is going to create lasting change. And the things that you have created in your life right now, it's a little bit of a glare. Maybe I'll keep those off. The things that you have created now are specifically how you see yourself. And so, something I put here is your internal reality and how you truly see yourself is what manifests externally, not just external actions. And so, that's why the saying fake it till you make it only works to a degree. You can't just present yourself differently and hope things last. You actually have to see yourself differently. And this is the conversation I was having with my client, and understanding that shifting your overall self concept needs to be in all areas of your life to be able to have this overall manifestation experience. Remember, manifestation 101, we're always manifesting because we are atoms, energy and motion. We are on different frequencies, vibrations, our point of attraction. This is the other conversation I had. Our point of attraction, our main point of attraction, will determine exactly what frequency, what vibration that we are on, and that will then pull in atoms on the same frequency and vibration. That in itself, manifestation 101, is a whole other life in itself around the how atoms work and frequencies and vibrations. It's very interesting. But what I want to do and tying this into self-concept and the conversation that I had with my client is actually understanding that when you see yourself in a particular way in your career or your business, that can have this flow and effect in your business. But if you don't see yourself as that person or someone worthy of the success that you want in your finances or your health or your relationships, nothing is going to be congruent. That's why I see a lot of high achievers who come and work with me and they go, my life is really good on paper, Jess. My life is really good on paper, and I struggled with this. In just before 2019, before I started my business, I struggled with this again in 2022, where on a piece of paper, if I wrote down everything, it looked really, really good. And if someone read that, they would go, "Oh, you have this success, it looks good, like what's the issue? But the issue is the way that we perceive ourselves, the way that we truly start to understand ourselves and the part that we play in this world, right? You are the controller. It's like the way that I see life is literally a game. If you want to break it down and have a visualization, it's like life is a game, this video game that you're playing. What character are you choosing? And so if you are choosing a particular uh, character in one area of your life, but you're not choosing that character again in another area of life, it's going to feel like, okay, my life is good, but it's not good. I'm feeling unfulfilled. I feel like I'm not tapping into my purpose. I feel like I don't know who I truly am. I feel like I'm unhappy with everything around me. And this is because self concept, the way you observe yourself in your place, is needs to be congruent amongst all fronts. And this is what I was sharing with my client. She's a new client who's just started with me, and we're having this conversation. And something else I've written in my note is self-concept is dynamic and can differ across various areas of your life and your relationship. So it doesn't need to look exactly the same, but it needs to all match up to the same overarching goal, the same overarching long-term vision that you are aiming for. Because if one part of your life isn't matching up to the way that you want to be seen, or the way you want to be see yourself, it's not about anyone else. We're not worrying about that. Then you're always going to feel like you're holding yourself back. And so it feels really, really unnatural to actually step into a different self concept and to have that congruent across all areas of our life. It feels unnatural because us as human beings, we become attached to identities and labels. We become attached to the way that we see ourselves, even though as high achievers, we see ourselves like this, but we see our ambition. We know our ambition. We know exactly what we desire. We know exactly at like deep down, we know that we have these big goals and they are going to be reached, and we have the dream and the desire. But dream and the desire and the ambition mean nothing if the way that you perceive yourself doesn't match up to it. And so what I see with so many high achievers in the conversation I actually had with my client today is understanding that it is going to feel very, very unnatural because we become attached to identities that are comfortable and easy, and we don't need to think about and are on autopilot. And even though when doing the inner work, we can quite blatantly see when we are doing a disservice to ourselves. That's why it can feel really hard. Or maybe we try for a few weeks and then all of a sudden we fail, perceived failure, because failure is only feedback, but we perceive we fail because nothing is sticking, because we're actually searching for, in this day and age, a quick win and instant gratification. And so being able to actually understand, how do I solidify this self concept, but how do I unattach from an old identity? How do I stop being addicted? Human beings, we get addicted to suffering and to stress because the cycles and the identities of suffering and stress are ones that are predictable. We can predict it. So there's one particular client who was new, who was working with me, and why we were having such a big conversation around all of this today, which, by the way, I'm covering all of this and going in deep in my new container, which starts in a couple of weeks, which is identity evolution. It's 4 weeks, 4 group calls. We go deep into identity shifting, self concept, levels of consciousness, and emotional mastery. We dive really, really deep in the conversations that I'm kind of sharing with you now. And so, one thing that my client was really struggling with is she knew exactly what she wanted to bring in terms of wealth, in terms of success. Even though she had this ambition, even though she had this desire, even though she had this dream to do this, she didn't recognize herself as the identity. And she was instead attached to and addicted to an identity that was suffering or had to work really, really, really hard. Now, I'm not negating that getting to a certain point, especially as a high achiever, requires hard work, but what I say is it actually requires discipline and focus, right? Let's get away. Let's get away with the narrative like we have to hustle and grind and be burnt out. We don't. We just need discipline and focus for most of the time. But even though she had this ambition isn't enough. Having a dream and a desire, having a vision board, writing in your journal isn't enough. Affirming things isn't enough. It's about matching up that desire to an identity and then unattaching yourself to the identity that you're actually addicted to. The stress, the suffering, the not getting the results, and you're addicted to it. And this is really simple. And like I teach the entire process inside of identity evolution. All the details are in link in bio. You can DM me. But the process of this is actually subconsciously, when we become so ingrained in an identity and the way that we perceive ourselves, we think anything outside of that is a threat. Our brain perceives it as a threat. So even though the conscious brain is saying, this sounds really, really good if I was to do this in my business, practice discipline, practice focus, and then I get, X amount of followers or whatever, and then I make X amount of money a month, and then I'm able to finally move into my dream apartment, or I can finally help my parents retire, or I can finally go on that dream vacation, or whatever it is, right? Whatever success is to you. But instead, like consciously, we can see that, right? And this is where there becomes such a gap for high achievers, is because it's like, well, I know that I want that. I know that I can have that. I know that's a possibility. I've seen evidence of it. I've seen small bits that I can achieve that. So where is the gap? Why can it feel such like we're always climbing the summit to reach that? It's because that you have not recognized, and I said this to my client, you have not recognized that you are not your identity, but rather you are the consciousness behind it. When you are the consciousness behind something, that means you get to dictate how something is operating. If we want another visual, I work in visuals. Imagine that your identity and you is a puppet and you're the puppeteer, right? And like, again, just something random that popped into mind. Like if it doesn't resonate, just leave it. But just like, that's how I just want you to separate. A lot of people think that they are the puppet and that's it. And the way they are, the way they attach to it, the way they are addicted to that, that's all they can do. And they need to change that puppet. No, you need to change you're the consciousness behind it. Being the consciousness behind it, you can change anything. But if you think that you're the actual puppet, it's going to feel really rigid. It's going to feel like you're not going to be able to change. And so this is what I was saying to my client is it makes it easier to change your self-concept when you recognize that you're the consciousness behind how you perceive yourself. And when you step into the consciousness of how you perceive yourself, you really are able to understand yourself at different levels and understand exactly who you are, and then be able to actually see, okay, I'm not that person suffering with my money or having to work harder. I'm not that person who's staying in a career because I've been in this job for 8 years and I feel loyal to them. Like I'm actually the person that quits my job. I've got a good nest of savings and I'm going to start that business because all I've been thinking about for 2 years is starting this business. Right? That's the difference between people who know their consciousness and not their actual identity, because your identity should always be evolving. This is why the container that I'm holding is called identity evolution. Your identity should be an ever evolving thing, an ever evolving space of consciousness where you are always wanting to up level. You are always wanting to get behind who you want to be and how you want to be and the way that you are feeling about your life and experiencing your life. The way that you are experiencing your life right now, the way that you are experiencing your reality is a direct reflection to who you perceive yourself to be. I'm just like, I've got my client notes from this conversation with my client. So I'm just going to look at them because there's so much gold in here that I think is so, so important. Something else that I put is, if this is interesting, right, is like if you have this loser mentality, right, and I don't mean like overall, you can be a high achiever but still have a loser mentality or a victim mentality, you will never be able to sustainably hold on to success even if you have temporarily manifested it. Because if you are always in the identity and the mindset that you are a loser, like you're losing things or it's never going to be sustainable for you, or you are a victim and it's like you just got lucky this one time, that's exactly what is going to come to fruition. That's exactly the results that you are going to receive. And so if we go back to one of the points I made at the start of the video around your point of attraction, your point of attraction is directly correlated with your self-concept. So the more that you perceive yourself as a loser or a victim mentality or someone who only got lucky once, you build a whole concept around this. You become addicted to that, the suffering, the stress, and the comfortability of the suffering and stress because you think it's too good to feel good about your life. Does life come with the struggles? Absolutely. That's a law of polarity, right? So we're not going to sit here and be like, work on your self-concept and you'll feel so great about everything all the time. You won't. You're going to feel shit about 50% of things. That's law of polarity. But the difference between being in a victim mentality but understanding law of polarity, which is another live in itself, is understanding, again, you are separate and you get to change your point of attraction at any point of time. And if something doesn't manifest externally, it is because of how you are internally seeing yourself. And so I'm just reading my notes if there's anything else that I've kind of, I think is important. And something, I love this: you are the divine being / consciousness manifesting in this physical form. I think that's such a beautiful thing to always remember, that it requires consistent practice to step into a different perception of yourself. But like, practice, practice, practice. It's a saying, practice makes perfect, and no one wants to do that, because my clients do, because that's why they come work with me and they're ready to actually make this change and see themselves. I've seen a lot of my clients, business clients, that have gone from this identity of I can't make any money, or it's really hard, or I struggled all of my childhood, to having 40K sales months, or being able to build up a multi six-figure business as a single mom and 3 kids. And at first being in victim mentality to being a single mom, but then being able to create this. I have watched a lot of my clients that have quit their job and started a business online, or have been able to actually finally, after 7 years in the same company, be able to progress. It's around how you see yourself. My methodology is the woman mastery methodology. There's 3 phases, right? Phase 1, subconscious reprogramming. Phase 2, identity shifting. And phase 3 is all around regulating to a new capacity. So I'm going to be going into all of this inside of identity evolution. But the main theme of all of this, just getting my charger, main thing of all of this is, let me put this on, is self-concept, self-identity. How do you shift from one identity to another? Because most people think that it's like, okay, today I see myself as someone who's, I can't hit 5 figures, consistent 5 figures in my business. I can't attract the love of my life, to, okay, tomorrow I'm going to wake up and I'm just going to call myself rich and a millionaire and like everyone loves me. It doesn't work like that. I have this specific framework called the upside down Y framework. Even my therapy friends, so my friends who are therapists, they use this with their client because it's chef's kiss. And what it really shows is how people cling to their old lack identities, because it's so much easier to cling to those. And when you understand that, I'm just reading this, you need to let go of old narratives that don't serve your new desired reality. And people don't want to do that. I didn't want to do that for the longest time. Before I quit my job, moved to Bali and started this business, that's one of the things, is like, that was such an identity shift for me, but I had to let go of the struggle. I had to let go of the stress. I had to let go of how I perceived myself. But I was staying in those identities for years, because I was clinging on to my old identities. I was addicted, but it's because I could predict everything that would happen. And so this is, and I hope this really shows you, this is why it's so important to work on your self-concept all of the time. And this is what we're diving deep into with the women inside of identity evolution, is really just understanding the narrative that you are playing right now, what you are clinging on to, why you are clinging on to something. I have a process called mirror beliefs that I'm going to go through with all of the women inside of identity evolution. And it's really, really powerful way to re-question any lack or survival mode or scarcity or fear that you have, like virtually, like within a minute. You can do this in 60 seconds and it's really, really powerful. And I just remembered because I did it with my client today. But the overarching thing, and I'm just like seeing if I missed anything from my notes. Let me just have a look. No, I think I pretty much covered everything. These are my like client notes that I'm reading today that are important for you to understand, that the most powerful thing that you can do for yourself is change the way you see yourself and change the way that you show up every single day, and blend those two together. Remember, like with the analogy I used, you are the consciousness behind if it's a puppet and a puppeteer, you need to be the puppeteer. Most people act as the puppet. and act like they have no free will. They act like they have no free will to do anything or to say anything outside of who they once were. But you need to understand that you are the puppeteer. You are the consciousness. You get to choose every day. People say that people want to stay in lack. Before I started my business, I wanted to stay in lack. I wanted to be in suffering. I wanted to be in stress. It was an addiction. It was something that was comfortable, but I had to get really, really real on how the trajectory of my life, like the trajectory of your life, is going to be determined by your self concept. And if right now you're not liking the way that you see yourself, you're not liking the way that life is actually progressing, if you're not liking the way that you are attracting your results, I work with high achieving, success driven women. They have seen success, big successes, financial success, career or business success, relationship, health. But then they get to this point where it's like, where I keep pushing up against the same roadblock over and over and over again. I'm doing the subconscious, the mindset stuff, and then I'm trying to like make my nervous system feel safe, and they're missing the way they perceive themselves in the world, and they are not letting go of old narratives. You can stay in and I'm going to be sharing my year inside of identity evolution, the 4-week container. We start in a couple of weeks. All of the details are in YouTube show notes below, or it's in the link in bio. All of the details are there because I am going to, I'm just monitoring TikTok comments. Let me just do this. I'm going to be sharing something that I will not be sharing over socials inside of this container about this year that I've had when it comes to self concept. And it has really solidified my modalities, my methodologies, but also the importance of this work, and doing this work. And I'm going to be like diving deep into my own personal experience, especially this year, of what happens when you allow yourself to perceive yourself as someone who is in lack, who is suffering, who blames the government, the economy, your parents, the algorithm, your friends, your ex, like your next door neighbor for everything. And that's what most people do. And some people may listen to this and they may get triggered, and that's absolutely fine. But the most important thing is understanding that you get to change from a lack mindset to an abundance mindset. It takes focus, it takes redirection. But when you change it, you solidify this in your subconscious mind, because self-concept work isn't just, I'm going to affirm I am rich, I'm beautiful in a mirror for 30 days, nor is it I'm going to journal like about my future self for 30 days. It's not that. It's subconsciously getting to the root and understanding why you are addicted to lack and suffering. This is exactly what me and my client went through in our session, is like, why are you addicted to lack and suffering? Why are you addicted to the same narrative, the same story you keep playing over? Why do you want to, make multi 5 figures in a month, but you're actually addicted to being and struggling to paying your bills, right? Why do you have this desire to bring in a brand new relationship because you're ready to welcome in your long-term partner, but you're addicted to attracting emotionally unavailable men, or whatever your preference is, right? Like most people just try to be like, I'm going to act like someone who's rich, or I'm going to act like someone who, is ready for a boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever. It's bigger than that. It's insane, because I think that's a lot of the superficial advice that is out there on the internet, and it's much bigger than that. It's actually getting to the root, like why. And I just did a live about this at something. It's around, yes, the root cause is your fear. Every single person teaches you that, but what most people aren't going to teach you, because part of my methodology is understanding that fear is a past memory, and that past memory has formed into a past resentment has now turned into a future imagination. Do you coach men as well? That's a good advice. Changing self. Yeah, it is. I don't coach men, only women. So, there's a whole thing to it, to understanding you can't just act different and do a few affirmations. It's like you want to get to the root and you want to pull it out, but you also want to get to know yourself so well that you don't get addicted back to that, because that's the pattern that most people fall into, is they change for a little bit and then it manifests in the physical form, and then they cannot sustain it, because genuinely at the root, again, you've stepped into the puppet, not the puppeteer identity, and so you cannot sustain something that you don't really see yourself as. anyway, I wanted to share these insights from my client notes. And I'm just looking over if there's anything else. I think I've really covered everything well in this. I want to share that. I felt called. I feel like someone needs to hear this. Someone's need to hear this. And it's just so important. It's something that I love. That's why it's part of my methodology. But like deeper than, okay, how can we just like say I am rich and I am beautiful and dressed differently? It's like, how can we change our levels of consciousness? I needed this. Amazing. I'm so glad that you clicked on this at the right time. How can we change our levels of consciousness? How can we emotionally balance ourselves to actually welcome the change? How can we become that consciousness that creates what we want to be perceived as for ourselves and for the world, right? Life is different when you know how to, for lack of a better word, manipulate your self-concept, right? And I say that in the most positive way. When I think of manipulating your self-concept, it's like molding. Maybe molding is a better word, right? Like imagine your self-concept like this piece of clay, very malleable, and you get to mold it. When life hits differently, when you know exactly the movements to mold it, and you feel so confident molding. I don't know if you've ever played with a piece of clay or anything like that. I definitely do. I definitely have, and I do. I love it. But it's just like when you get into the vibe of it and you're just making something and it feels really good and it's not clunky, it hits differently. And that's exactly what it's like to be able to learn this self-concept word that actually sticks. So think about the cycles that you've been repeating. Last thing before I go, think about the cycles that you've been repeating for the past 90 days, more specifically, just to like keep really small rather than being like, all right, over the past 10 years, this is what doing, because we dive deeper into that inside of identity evolution and really just start to, I say to my clients, no shame to yourself, no judgment to yourself. You just need to get super, super curious, right? Why have you molded to a degree and then you've fallen back in to the same pattern, or you're addicted to that? It's like if we go with the clay analogy, I'm just going to run with it. It's like if you have a piece of clay and you are making a bowl, right? You're making you're making a mug, right? So I wish I had a mug to like kind of demonstrate. You're making a mug, and you know how a mug is, and then you have the holder, right? Now imagine if you made this mug out of clay and you had the holder, and the holder kept breaking off. And so you try reattach it, but you do the exact same way, right? You don't change anything. You're just like, okay, I'm going to plop it back on the same way. And then it falls off again. This is how people treat identity work. And then you may be like, oh, I'll just make it a little bit shorter. You don't really change the methodology or understanding why it fell off, right? You're doing the surface level band-aid fix. And then you pop it on, it lasts a bit longer. And then as you're playing with the mug, it falls off again, right? That's how people are with identity work. And this is what gets taught a lot on the internet is like superficial, like fix this, or like, change your hair, or do this, or like just you got to act confident. No, like it works to a degree, but then the holder is going to fall off. And that's how I want you to see it is like, how can we actually understand why this, if we're running with the clay analogy, just run with it. If we're trying to fix why the holder won't fit on, like why won't it stay on and break, then we need to, what we would have to do is inspect what we've created out of a piece of clay, how we've actually blended it in. Have we done enough crisscrosses? Like, is it the right amount of clay to be able for the weight of this cup? See, most people go, oh, I'll just like try harder and I'll push it. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. I really like that analogy I just created. I feel like could be refined 110%. But yeah, I hope you understand like what I was trying to say is we need to learn how to be very malleable, how to be able to mold at any point in time instead of being really, really rigid. So do a reflection on the past 90 days. This is your homework. Do a reflection on your past 90 days, really without shame, without judgment, like write it down rather than having it in your head, and just understand. And I'd like to do the 4-quadrant thing for a lot of things. So the 4-quadrant setup is you divide your page into 4 quadrants. You've got business or career, or if you've got both business/career, you've got finances, you've got health and wellness, and then you've got relationships, right? Make it so super simple for yourself. You look at the past 90 days, write out all your behavior, all your patterns, the results. So, monetary, what are you making in your business? What do you want to make? And then it's like health and wellness. Well, I actually wanted to be able to deadlift 100 kilos. And after 90 days, like I'm still stuck at 65. Relationships, I said I wanted to welcome in a partner. And out of 90 days, like I've gone on 2 dates and I've rejected everyone else, right? So we start to like understand our patterns, and then we need to then go from, and like I said, come into identity evolution, because we actually go into, how do I understand that root? How did I get there? Why am I now addicted to it? I bet you could help a lot of men if you decide to coach them as well someday. Thank you so much. Maybe one day I will open something up for both men and women. Um, and so the purpose of this is just truly understanding the past 90 days, because what you're living right now is an exact reflection of your self-concept 90 days ago. That's as simple as it is. So yeah, go away and do that. Understand yourself. The big basis of all of my work is helping you reconnect with yourself, help you understand yourself and understand why you are doing what you're doing. And I think that's really, really important. Anyway, thank you for everyone on Instagram, on YouTube, on TikTok that have joined. I really appreciate all of you. Any questions, let me know. And like I said, the container identity evolution is 4 weeks, 4 group calls. We dive deep. If you love this, you will love that. We dive deep into this. And yeah, I'm super excited for all of the details are in show notes for YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram. It's in my link in bio, or just send me a message and we can chat to see where you're at and what's going to be the best path forward. Anyway, appreciate all of you. Thank you for joining. Let me know your biggest takeaways as well. And I will see you tomorrow for the next live. Bye.